Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. In the first story, we'll tell you about how our OP encountered a client who had never received a no answer in his life. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Customer begs for me to break the rules and ends up with nothing. About 7 years ago, I worked at a supplement store in a very wealthy town, and still remember this interaction perfectly. I'll condense it down to the main bits, but in reality it lasted 15 minutes or so. This obese lady comes in with a bag full of supplements, approximately $300 worth, and tosses it on the counter while I'm helping someone else in the store. Lady: I need to return these. My husband and I didn't use them and we don't plan on it. Me: Sure, let me just finish helping this customer and I'll be happy to help you. Lady, visibly annoyed because I can't drop everything to help her that second. Me: I check the receipt and notice they're 2 months past the 90-day return policy. Unfortunately, I'll have to process this as a store credit because it's exceeded the return date. I can't believe this. My husband and I are loyal customers and I demand to get my money back. We go back and forth for 5 minutes or so. I explain that it's automatic in the system. I can't just pull cash out of the register. I'm just a new employee and I don't have the power to override it, etc. All true. Lady's now yelling, telling me she's going to call corporate and report me, contact my manager, never shop here again, etc. Okay, ma'am, let me call my manager and see if he can help over the phone. That's better. She had the look you all probably have seen of a spoiled adult child getting their way. As I call my boss and explain that this lady's having a meltdown, he gives me his login info despite protocol to manually process the return as cash. Hey, what are these? She brings over the new version of the product she's returning. That's the new Heart Health Vitamin Pack, similar to the one you have, but with added X, Y, and Z. I want these. I'll exchange the 8 boxes I have for 8 of these. As I'm still on the phone with my manager, unfortunately, ma'am, those are $10 more and a different product in the system, so I can't do an exchange, only give you your money back like you asked. I'm trying to help you with an exception to the policy. The lady starts blowing up again. Why not? These are the same product. They're called the same thing. I just want the new one. Why aren't you doing your job correctly? I'll have you fired. She pulls out her boxes from the bag and I see that not only have 2 been opened, but all of them are expired. So just to recap, she wanted her money back for open, used, expired products 150 days after buying them, 60 days after the return policy ended. Now she wants to one-for-one exchange them for new products that cost more and are different in the system and is throwing a tantrum. I tell my boss what she's demanding now, and to my delight, he tells me to refuse to help her and tell her she'll need to come back and speak to him directly. Upon hearing this, she continues to berate me as we go back and forth. Berating turns to begging, and eventually realizing she won't get her way, she grabs her stuff and says she'll never be back and that we'll be hearing from her husband. I was so happy to not have to give in to her demands, especially after we already went out of the way to give her what she wanted. She obviously has never been told no in her life, and it was awesome to see her unable to handle it. It makes me laugh when people who claim to be loyal customers freak out about store credit. You just said you shop here regularly. Store credit should be no problem. And our second story. Boss fires best employee because of my compliance. Hospitality isn't known for its amazing personalities. But no one could take the cake of a boss and his wife that I worked for about a decade ago. They took over a beautiful pub/restaurant in a mountain range that the locals love to visit. It would have taken almost no effort at all to have a very successful business as there was no real competition and the area was very affluent. On weekends, there was always a queue of customers. Unfortunately for all the staff, and the locals mentioned the owners were on a massive ego trip, having moved from the city to set up this restaurant as a way to settle down, which they clearly were not capable of in the slightest. The wife boss will now be known as Karen. They were so highly strung that the hairs would stand up on the back of your neck when they came into the building. I learned to expect that every word that came out of their mouths would either be barking orders or criticizing even the most petty of details. I kid you not, Karen yelled at me once because I hadn't turned all the coffee cup handles so that they were pointing in the same direction. I started working there part-time and managed to put up with their antics much better than the countless other part-timers that came and went. For one, I was content to just do whatever they told me, as deep down I knew it would come back to bite them in the end. Being their longest staff member, after just 4 months, I kid you not, I got the best pick of shifts. Also, by being one of the only fully trained members of the staff, I never really worked directly with them, as I would cover the shifts on their days off. Every day, they seemed to be getting more and more stressed and micromanaging to the point they decided to just install cameras everywhere so they could sit at home and monitor the staff. I'd get calls multiple times an hour telling me things like one of the tables needed to be cleared, the customers had barely left, or that I was standing and talking to a local too long and should be sweeping or something. Unfortunately, this kind of corporate McDonald's-style ethos didn't really work when the majority of your customers were regulars who wanted a coffee, a meal, and a 10-minute chat with a friendly face. One thing they were really hung up on was the till. Such was their paranoia about the till that only the bosses, myself, and one other girl, Jessica, could operate it no matter what or how busy we were, which of course led to multiple situations of inconvenience. Also, we had to count out the till several times a day and deposit the money in the safe, even if we only had made $20. After a particularly busy day, I was closing and had received new instructions just that day from Karen that from now on we would keep all the big denominations, $50 or more, cue eye roll, hidden under the main compartment of the till. From the moment she said it, I knew it was another nitpicky rule that she'd forget about straight away, so of course, what else should I do but follow orders? The next morning, when I finally checked my phone around 10 a.m., I saw that I had 10 missed calls from work and also, worryingly, from Jessica, the other staff member who I got on really well with. I called Jessica first to hear her tell me that Karen had come in and counted the till, and when she couldn't find $50, accused Jessica of stealing it and fired her on the spot. No, I'm not joking. Jessica had called me from the car park to say goodbye, and while I immediately knew what happened and told her about it, as well as saying sorry to her, we were both glad she didn't have to work in that nightmare place anymore. I was angry that the owners had treated Jessica like that. I knew they were crazy, but to fire someone accusing them of stealing was a new low. However, I did get great satisfaction from calling them and putting on my best facade of nonplussed. The conversation went like this. Karen, I've just had to fire Jessica as she was caught stealing. The till's missing $50. I still couldn't believe that they didn't ask me first, as I was the last one to actually count the money the night before. Why did they even think it was Jessica and not me? They were completely nuts. Me, in my best malicious compliance voice, oh, that's weird. I definitely counted it correctly and put all the money just as you told me, with the $50 notes in the bottom compartment as you explained just yesterday. I'm not going to lie, the following pause brought me great glee, as I could practically hear the buzzing in Karen's head as she opened the till and found the missing $50 note right where it should be. Having just fired the second longest staff member they had, me still being the first, meant they had to work all of Jessica's shifts before we could hire and train another, saying goodbye to all their time off for weeks. Also, I made sure to tell our regular customers who took the time to get to know the staff by name what had happened, and they asked where lovely Jessica had gone. Many stopped coming in unless it was my shift, having seen the real personalities of the bosses, and they tipped the staff more too. I stayed there for a short while longer and was happy to hear that Jessica had found a job in a much nicer cafe soon after leaving. I left after I'd saved up money to go traveling and found out that the restaurant closed just a few weeks later. I don't think they even lasted a year total. And our last story. Insurance lawyer drags case out to ruin me. He learns what it feels like to have his life interrupted. I was in an accident that left me unable to work for quite a spell. It was obvious that I wasn't at fault. It was an open and shut case, but that means nothing until the judge brings his gavel down. The claim exceeded the amount of insurance that the other guy had, so the insurance company had nothing to lose by dragging the case out, which they did. Their lawyer managed to get adjournment after adjournment, hoping to starve me out and settle for a pittance. He almost succeeded. In the years following the accident, the bills piled up, my marriage fell apart, and my credit rating was destroyed. I hawked and sold everything I had of value just to put food on the table. I eventually had to get food stamps to survive. I lived in a small town, and this was humiliating to say the least. The worst part was the little half smile their lawyer would give me at the end of each adjournment. One night, while trying to glue a toy together for one of the kids, a revenge plan presented itself. It was time for him to feel what it was like to have his life interrupted. The courthouse had a several-story parking structure that everyone used. It offered a number of good hiding places. This was before there were security cameras everywhere. I took a small pin, cut the head off of it so it was just a small straight shaft with a pointed end, then superglued it to his door latch. I did stay to watch, and sure enough, he jammed his hand into the pin while opening his car door. The pin fell to the ground. He never saw it. By the way he jumped and screamed, I'm guessing he thought it was a burr on his latch. I then waited a few hours and used a payphone, this was years ago, at the courthouse and dialed his office. When he came to the phone, I asked how his hand was. I disguised my voice. He immediately made the connection. I then told him that he had pricked himself on a hypodermic needle that came from an AIDS patient. His scream was most satisfying. The whole call lasted less than a minute. I did see him in court a few months later, and he looked like hell. I wasn't in the loop to learn how he reacted, but I assume he underwent a lot of AIDS testing before he was satisfied that he didn't have the disease. I'm guessing, hoping, that he did have a certain stigma during that time. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.